Next up on the, as I say, the very packed agenda is Becky. Becky's one of the participants of the Action Learning Sets, and she's going to talk about her kind of project looking at developing a culture of reading.
Hi everyone, I'm Becky Day and I am a functional skills English lecturer at HSDC. So I quite often see Dave and Dom in the corridors. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So if you're all back onto the Zoom meeting, there's all my details on the front there. So the quote I've got on my first page is, "There is more treasure in books," go back please, "there is more treasure in books than in all the pirates' loot on Treasure Island," says Walt Disney. So it kind of gives you a clue to the project that I wanted to really investigate. Before I go on, just if you could use the chat box, just write down very quickly the last time that you read a book from cover to cover. So how long ago? Was it yesterday? Was it a month ago? Was it a year ago? Just be honest. You can put the book if you can remember. Okay, so we've got some no idea. We've got last week, this morning, very good. First lockdown, definitely. Yesterday, Christmas holidays. Read every night. Wonderful. Probably 2 years ago on holiday, yeah. So we've got quite a few, always have a book on the go. I've got about 5 on the go. I tend to start books, never finish them. Audio books count, yeah, they do. Yeah, very good. So as academics, really, we should always be reading. We are an example to our students. But what kind of set me off on this course of my investigation, so you'll see on the next slide, was what my students said to me. So in my class, my students are normally ones that have failed their GCSE at school. They have no kind of like, they don't want to be in the class. They don't want to be learning English. They hate English, quite a lot of them, to be honest. And they actually sit there and boast and say, "I've never read a book." And I was thinking, surely that can't be right. Surely they should have read a book at some point in their life. And they sit there quite boastfully and go, "No, never read a book." So I did a little bit of research and I was actually quite astonished at what I found. So just a quick overview there on the screen, you can see that illiterate Britain, 1 in 20 adults have a reading age of a five-year-old basically. And there's another statistic that you can't quite see on there. It says in 2019, just 26% of under 18 spent some time reading each day. And this is the lowest daily record recorded since 2005. So it's quite astonishing. So as a college and as a lecturer, I felt that I needed to do something about that. I needed to, even if it was just one student I could change to change their perspective on reading a book, it would be worth trying to do something. Now, there is a graph on there, you can't quite see all of it, but from age 5 to 8, the interest in reading is way up there, almost 80%, and it just gradually declines to the lowest point at 14 to 16. So just before we get them at college, our age group, it goes right down to 40% of 14 to 16-year-olds have any interest in reading at all. And that's quite a shocking statistic. So this is what propelled me into my research. So on the next slide, you'll be able to see the reasons why students don't read. Because I asked my students, I said, "Why don't you read? Why don't you read books? I love reading. That's why I teach English." And they were like, "Oh, well, I don't need to read. I've got the internet. I watch Netflix. I do this, I do that. I'm on Facebook. I watch YouTube." They don't make time for it. They don't want to do it. They fill their time, their spare time, with handheld devices. It's the main reason. A second reason, you can see the picture, it says, "I hate books, I hate books." I think one of the reasons in the 14 to 16 category it goes down, they're forced to read certain books in their GCSE. and they don't like them. They can't associate with them. They just have no interest in them, and it turns them completely off. And then in the bottom right, you can't actually see the picture behind the big cross, but it's of a parent reading to their child. Quite a lot of my students, when I've talked to them, they say, my mum and dad don't read, or my parents, or my carers, they haven't grown up in that kind of environment. So that really does affect them as well. And then, of course, dyslexia or any barriers to learning is a big one as well. So those are the main reasons that I've found. And then you may be thinking, well, you may be teaching A-level or degree level students. And when I've done a research on that, they said that students don't read anymore because they don't have to read a whole book. You know, when they do that academic study, they can just research and get a quote off the internet. They don't have to read the whole book anymore. They're reading in a different way, students are. They work harder probably than they did before, and they probably get their sources from a wider range. But they don't have to read the whole book because Google finds it for them. They find the exact quote. So they don't have to read round a subject. They can type in the keywords, get their quote, pop it in their essay. Done. But is that good? Is that actually helping them? And I don't think it is. So on the next slide, these are my reasons, some that I've researched and some that that I've come up with. This is why it's good to read. We know that. That's why we're all mainly teaching English or maths. You know, these are the main reasons. Improving brain connectivity, their vocabulary, their spelling. It improves their empathy, reduces stress. And the two key things are, if you go away with this, reading for pleasure is more important for their cognitive development and their achievement than their parents' level of education and their economic background, social economic background. So if a person comes from quite a poor area, if they are reading, that has more impact on their success than what maybe their parents' success has been, you know, the setting that they've come from. And also 16-year-olds who choose to read books for pleasure outside of school are more likely to secure managerial or professional jobs. So knowing this, I couldn't just leave my students sitting there going, I've never read a book before. So on the next slide, you can see how I kind of tried to introduce books into my classes. If I just turned up with a pile of books and said, right, guys, let's try and read some of these, I'm not sure that they would take me up on the challenge. So what I did, I kind of like embedded it in my teaching. So they needed to learn about diary entries and how to write a diary entry. So I got them to research some famous diary entries from the past. And so when I taught this lesson, this is like a snapshot of my couple of slides in my PowerPoint. And in the bottom left, you can see Anne Frank, the diary of a young girl. And this opened up into a conversation. A lot of the students were interested in who she was. We talked about the parallels of lockdown and what she was experiencing. And of course, they love all the kind of like gore and death as well. So when we were talking about concentration camps, as sad as that is, they were really, really interested. So I just put it to them. I said, look, if I got hold of this diary, would you read it? And quite a few of them said yes. So I was walking around HSDC and I bumped into Dom in the corridor, and he was asking me how this was all going. And I just told him what had happened, and he said, oh, we've got some funding. You can get those books if you like. Send me an email with a link and I'll get some for you. So I was like, whoa, really? So we ordered, well, Dom ordered only 20 books to start with. I wasn't going to try and do all, 100 students that I teach. And I just picked on the ones that were keen and interested. And I kind of made it an elite group almost. You want to be part of this group. You want to be reading. This is a cool thing to do. And Dom was really good. And I had the books within about 2 days. It was amazing. And on the next slide, you can see what I did with it. So I chose 20 students, and we created a Google Classroom for over Christmas called Anne Frank Discussion Forum. And on this, it wasn't really extra work. It was just to encourage the students to try and read it. We're trying to put things on there like their favorite quote. I'm going to get them to take a picture of themselves reading the book in an unusual place. Just opened up the discussion about and trying to sort of get them through this book. And obviously, we haven't seen each other face to face since I've done this, but I have had some good feedback. So on the next slide, you can see some of the thoughts that my students have written on there. So you can see there, it says, I started reading the book last week and I'm enjoying it. That's a positive. So some of these are people that have not read a book before. The next one down below says, I am on page 150 now. Ooh. I feel sorry to know that she died at a young age, and I'm curious about the end. Many thoughts in it. And I actually had an email today from one of my students who was the one who boasted that she'd never read a book. She has taken home Anne Frank to read, and she has started reading it. And I'm starting to sort of get this culture of reading back in the classroom, which I'm very, very pleased about. And so in my group, I was with Anna and Charlotte and Millie. It was just wonderful to discuss and just be together to talk through this process as we've gone. And they've come up with some amazing ideas about, you know, short stories I could bring in and, you know, all of that thing. The collaboration of all those minds together has really helped and experienced. So it's been quite an organic research project. It's kind of just happened naturally, but it's very, I don't know, I just want to do more now. I was thinking of all these other books I can start including. So it's kind of starting to escalate and make me really look at the science behind it and just getting excited about it. So might be a small drop in a very large ocean, but it's definitely a start. And I know I've made a difference to students, and that's what this is all about. So thank you for listening. Any questions? Oh, my last slide. This is a quote from Anne Frank. I like this quote. So that's my aim, for them to not want to put that book down.
Thanks, Becky.
No worries.
That's brilliant. What was your quote? So it may be a very small drop in the ocean, but it all counts. Or something. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but I thought that was a really a beautiful way to bring it together, and that's what a lot of these projects are. They're starting points, and hopefully once you get the slight bug of collaboration and research and investigation, etc., and you do a little bit more of that, then you start to see other opportunities and things that come up. And that's hopefully what we're going to show you today as we move through the slides, the other opportunities and ways you can get involved with the huge raft of programs the ETF offer, but also a lot of other organisations offer as well.